our good friend Scott Pruitt, who, mind you, was confronted by a very strong woman with a baby with her, and she told him that he needs to resign, and he should resign.
And he said, okay, and that's exactly how the story went.
But there's more to the story. I mean, what's really going on? Because apparently he's got a lot of scandals happening to him. What's the deal?
I remember there was, I forget what corporate news network did, but they were talking about him, and they started listing his scandals, and there were so many that it was like watching credits roll on the screen, just like, oh, he decided to put a $40,000 soundproof phone booth in. Oh, he misused funds here. Oh, he took a residence that he was staying in from a lobbyist. Oh, he did this, he did this, he did this. He took money. He spent all these different things. So what happened was that he resigned. Trump, of course, was very, very happy with him because Trump, from the beginning, said for every one regulation added, we're going to remove 2, except they forgot that and just removed 3 for every 0 that they added. So the real question is, who is this guy going to be replaced by? He's going to be replaced by his deputy, who was a former coal lobbyist until he got the job as being his deputy. So the guy that's going to replace him is probably going to be as bad as him, if not worse, because that's always the case. But he's also a Washington insider, so he has a very good idea of how to fly under the radar. The reason Pruitt was knocked out wasn't because he's destroying the EPA, he's destroying clean water, he's allowing coal plants to pump toxic slurry into rivers. That's not why he was kicked out, because that's not an issue that you get kicked out of a position in America, because that's fine, all that's just policy, doesn't matter if it kills people. It's always interesting that we have issue with people that are murderers, but we don't have issues with people that have a pen that can kill 1,000 people with a bill. So that's a sidebar, but we'll go back on to what he got hit by. He got hit because he did publicly inexcusable things, again, like working with a lobbyist, even though the guy that's replacing him is still going to work with lobbyists, just he's going to do it in a way that's legal. So he's being knocked out because he's boisterous and didn't know how to hide his corruption. So that's what we're used to dealing with. So Scott Pruitt being forced to resign, it was going to happen eventually. We were hoping it would happen sooner, but he's being replaced by someone that's no better than him. Now, as far as him resigning, Trump said very nice things about him, said he has done a great job in making the Environmental Protection Agency exactly what it needs to be. Of course, that means deregulating everything. So what's interesting about this is, again, that the big issue in America, and I think this is a very important point to make, that I think is implicit and everyone understands it, but it's not really consciously thought about, is that when people are fired, it's because they've done something personal. But America, for some reason, doesn't have an issue for people doing things public. Again, if I put out a bill that, I don't know, caused a situation where 1,000 more people starved to death, or I took away that there's a clean needle sharing program that's kept X number of people from getting, let's say, AIDS or something like that, and another X number of people from dying, and I would do that, I would consider that, from my point of view, that you've killed people.
Yeah.
You've done things. So when he's able to take away laws, take away clean air, which increases asthma, which is air pollution, which kills worldwide about 7 million people a year. You're dealing with all these different things that he has done that aren't a real issue, that maybe people can protest against, but from a government point of view, it's like, so what? But he can put together a phone booth that uses a fraction of the money that he spends doing other things, a fraction of the money that he's giving to coal companies, a fraction of the money in the action. But that's an issue because he's going outside of the bounds of his position. What do you think, Kit?
Well, this is another example of the Trump administration having, again, scandals and corruption. It shouldn't surprise us that people in his administration have a lot of skeletons in their closet. It shouldn't surprise us that many of these people that he has appointed have serious problems with many of the agencies, with the State Department or EPA or you name it. This is Donald Trump picking people who, I guess, are loyal to him and will not challenge him in regards to any of his policies or decisions. They're a bunch of yes men, but these yes men are also willing to be corrupt, and they have a history of corruption. Dare I say it, probably even greater than Donald Trump's series of corruption, and that's a lot. All right, but when we look at Scott Pruitt and he's resigning, I think that one, it's a huge win, and two, people are happy. But then we got to remember, President Trump, he's still president. He needs to have somebody in charge of the EPA. He's going to pick somebody else who is probably going to be just as bad as Scott Pruitt or even worse. And, this administration, how it's treating the environment, how we can't talk about climate change, how we can't address, issues that are impacting our environment, such as having clean air, clean water, clean soil, a healthy, strong ecosystem that we have here in this country. If we're going to have people that are going to be turning a blind eye to it or refuse to acknowledge certain key scientific facts, the only way we're really going to have a full functioning government again is if, especially in the presidency, is if somebody's able to get Donald Trump out of office in 2020. And it's
actually similar to Scott Pruitt. It's the same thing we've been saying with Trump. You can't just impeach Trump because then you deal with Pence, and it's a very similar setup where similar between Scott Pruitt and his deputy. That it's the guy that's the boisterous one that telegraphs the terrible decisions he's going to make, that everyone hates. Pence is arguably much worse on policy because he's a theocrat. He believes in the rapture, and he's effective. He knows the Washington insider game. He knows how to run things. He knows who to ask.
The neoliberal establishment system very
and he knows how to use it. He knows how to get things passed, whereas Trump is just bumbling around. And that's always the trade-off. If you get rid of Trump through impeachment, then you're going to get a more capable person who will have a better concentration of power, who knows what he's doing. He may not be as boisterous as Trump. He may be quieter. He may not want to be alone with another woman unless his wife is there. But he's a guy that would know how to pull the levers of power much more effectively. And he's also owned by the Koch brothers, along with most of Congress, whereas Trump obviously got money from the Mercers and himself, but mainly the Mercers, who don't agree with Trump, don't agree with the Koch brothers. So it's actually a very nice microcosm of what is happening. And so I would expect that this new guy that's coming in, again, former coal lobbyist, is going to do exactly what Pruitt has been doing, if not better, because he knows how to keep a low profile.
Yep, and, again, it's another coal guy, and maybe at one point in this country's history, there was a point in this country's history where coal was an effective source and resource that people needed for energy and, to get industry moving. But the world is moving on. No one's interested in old fossil fuel resources. I mean, you got countries all over the world investing in green technologies and actually doing what they can to, at least in some ways, preserve their ecosystems and environment and make sure they have clean water, clean air, clean soil, for their respective countrymen, right? You've got programs in the European Union, Great Britain, Canada, Russia, China of all places. They're all investing into renewable energy resources with whatever resources that they have. But here in the United States, the richest, most powerful country in the world, we have the EPA being censored by the presidency, basically saying that they cannot talk about climate change. They cannot talk about, renewable energy resources. They cannot talk about this or that or anything else.
In fact, the tariffs that they are passing on solar cells and aluminum and other things have cost, I think it's like 10 or 20 times as many jobs as they've created in coal. And they've barely created any in coal. And the people that are in coal, actually the jobs that they're getting recently are from the steel mills. That have now slight uptick in production. And so, all this work, and coal has produced, 70 jobs. Hooray! It's also cost thousands of jobs in other sectors, and will continue to with the trade war that's happening.
And real quick, too, I just want to add a final note to this. Look, I really do feel sorry for a lot of those communities, especially with the coal communities, how they, want to go back to the way that things used to be, but that's not going to happen. Nothing stays the same forever, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm not in control of that. Daniel's not in control of that. No one's in control of that. Society and humans move on to better things and better resources, and what the United States failed to do was actually create a backup plan for a lot of these communities that are really suffering. And now that we have an EPA that's turning a blind eye to fossil fuels, that this is the one time where the industry can do whatever it wants. And even though Scott Pruitt is resigning, somebody else is going to come along and he's going to give the fossil fuel industries a pat on the back and say, "Don't worry about it. It's all good." So this is a win, but it's also we're still back to square one again.
So I want to say one quick thing on this, that coal is dying. I think everyone already understands that implicitly. I think there are a few people that are stubborn in the areas that think that they can make it last forever. Coal has less energy density than natural gas or oil. It's just not as effective to drill for. It's not effective to mine for. Natural gas is eating up so much of what coal used to do because it's cheaper. It's all about how much does it cost to go from whatever's in the ground to how much I can sell it for once it's refined. That's the real question. And coal has lost that game to both natural gas and to renewables. So it's like trying to save Blockbuster by sanctioning Netflix and subsidizing like 75% of the costs that Netflix takes, not Netflix, but that Blockbuster takes. It's a dying industry. The area needs something else. They've been talking about maybe growing industrial hemp there, which would be a nice change of pace. It would be cleaner for their environment. There's other things they can do, but we're so stuck and we're so rigid on a certain way of doing business that we lost the bigger picture that progress and new industries yield better results. If the U.S. had the same reaction to computer technology, we would never have Silicon Valley, which is an enormous piece of power for the U.S., piece of economic growth for the U.S., and it's just move on.